My wife and I have shared almost 3 decades together, with 26 of those years being in marriage. I, a 51-year-old man, am fortunate to be married to a 49-year-old woman. Together, we have raised 2 grown children, a son who is now 24 and a daughter who is 22. Our journey began in college, where we met, fell in love, and eventually tied the knot, creating what I believe to be a truly wonderful marriage. Throughout our years together, we have engaged in numerous activities, maintained constant communication, and faced any challenges that came our way. Both of us have had successful careers, supporting and encouraging each other in our professional endeavors. Our love life has remained strong, perhaps not as frequent as in our younger years, but just as passionate. I am the proud owner of a small landscaping company, which I established after graduating. Meanwhile, my wife has been working from home extensively due to the COVID situation. Lately, we have been discussing the possibility of me stepping back from the day-to-day operations of my business and her transitioning to part-time work. This would allow us to spend more quality time together and fulfill our desire to travel, especially now that our children have become independent. Looking back, I can confidently say that there were no warning signs that I have often heard about. There were no suspicious texting habits, no secretive behavior with her phone, no drastic changes in her wardrobe, no unusual actions, and no nights out with colleagues. Whenever she went out, it was usually with friends or family, and the following day someone would always mention that I should have joined them. However, I appreciated her having her own personal time, just as I cherished the solitude I found in my workshop. She would always return home early, so it never crossed my mind that something unexpected was about to happen. To say that I was taken aback would be an understatement. Just a week prior to that fateful day, I had planned a surprise weekend getaway at a romantic bed and breakfast to celebrate our anniversary. It was during the winter festival weekend, and I left work early with the intention of surprising her. I instructed her to pack for a trip as I pulled into our driveway. That's when I noticed an unfamiliar car parked there. Instantly, a gut feeling washed over me. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was amiss. I sat there hoping against hope that my instincts were wrong, but deep down, I knew they weren't. Suddenly, my trembling ceased, and an unusual sense of tranquility washed over me. Despite the turmoil raging within, I managed to enter the house quietly through the back door. There, I found my black Labrador lying down, wearing a sorrowful expression as if sensing that something was amiss. Instead of his usual exuberant welcome, he remained still. Oh, how I adore that dog. With cautious steps, I ascended the stairs, the sounds emanating from our bedroom growing clearer with each stride. Approaching the door, I swung it open, revealing a sight that left me momentarily frozen. There he was, her boss, atop my wife. After a brief pause, I mustered the strength to shout, "Surprise!" The ensuing chaos that unfolded would have been comical if it weren't so heart-wrenching. He clumsily rolled off the bed, attempting to escape but becoming entangled in the sheets. Meanwhile, my wife repeatedly shrieked, "Oh my God!" desperately trying to cover herself but failing due to the entanglement. Eventually, he managed to free himself and began searching for his clothes, which happened to be on the opposite side of the bed. It struck me that they were in the same spot where mine usually ended up. For some reason, I beat him to them and snatched them up. My wife sobbed uncontrollably, repeating, "I'm so sorry." I retreated to the door, positioning myself there while he stood naked beside the bed. I retrieved the large armchair from the corner, dragged it to the door, and took a seat. He demanded his clothes, but I refused, tossing my wife's robe at him, which hung on the door. He started to approach me, but even at 51, I remained in good physical shape. Standing at 6 feet, 3 inches, and weighing 240 pounds, years of gym workouts and landscaping work had kept me fit. I locked eyes with him and issued a warning. "If you come any closer, it won't end well for either of us. You'll end up in the hospital and I'll find myself in jail. So why don't you just take a seat?" My wife, now weeping into the pillow, gradually composed herself and sat up. Eventually, I retrieved my phone and declared, "Both of you will now confess everything while I record it." They exchange glances and my wife inquires, "What do you mean by everything?" I retort, "Exactly that, everything. How it started, how long it has been going on, when and where it happened, hotel stays, dinners, the whole 9 yards." My wife insists that this was the only occurrence, to which I angrily exclaim, "That's bull crap!" I point out that there is no way she would be comfortable enough to bring him into our bed if this affair wasn't long-standing. I warn her that if she lies to me again, I will walk out that door and seek a divorce attorney. Overwhelmed, she breaks down crying once more. For the next 10 to 15 minutes, the truth pours out. This affair has been going on for over 9 months. It all began with him flirting with her and gradually progressed to him inviting her to lunch, which she accepted. After a few drinks, they ended up in a hotel. She came home to me that night as if nothing had happened. She insists that it was tearing her apart and she wanted to confess but didn't know how. I call foul once again, stating that if it truly tore her apart, she wouldn't have continued it so effortlessly. They even attended a week-long work conference together, which I used to accompany her to. She informs me that company policy had changed and spouses were no longer allowed to attend. I put my phone away, and silence fills the room once more. Then an idea strikes me. I search through his clothes for his phone and ask for his passcode. Surprisingly, he provides it. I start browsing through his phone. I come across some photos of a woman whom I presume is his wife, and I inquire about her name, Carol. I comment that she is quite attractive, though not as stunning as my Ashley, as I find more pictures of their children. It turns out he has 3 children, and I finally stumble upon a family portrait of all of them. Holding up the phone, I remark, "What a lovely family." I question him, "Why would you risk it all for a fling with my wife?" He responds, "What do you mean risk it all?" I reply, "Do you genuinely believe Carol won't find out? I'm about to call her right now." He stands up and protests, while my wife pleads with me not to do this to him. I snap back, "Don't do this too. You have shattered me, our family, our friends, our future, and my heart. And yet, you are concerned about his well-being?" Once again, I find myself trembling, desperately trying to conceal my tears, but I can no longer hold myself together. I sink back into the chair, overcome with grief. She tries to approach me, but I give her a stern look and command her to keep her distance. After a while, I regain my composure and glance at his phone once more. He pleads with me once again, begging me not to do it, promising that he will tell her. "Sure you will," I retort. He stands there, pleading with me, as I search for her number and decide that a FaceTime call would have an even greater impact. She answers the call, looking puzzled, and asks, "Who are you? Is my husband all right?" I reply, "He's fine for now, but that is about to change." I switch the camera to show him standing there in my wife's robe. I state, "I believe you are familiar with this man. The room he is in is my bedroom. The floral robe he is wearing belongs to this woman." As I turn the phone to capture my wife, who is desperately trying to hide under the sheets. But it is too late. That is my wife. I came home early today and found them in bed together. I genuinely feel sorry for her and regret how I had to break the news. She begins to sob, and he tries to apologize, saying, "Honey, I'm so sorry, I can explain. It was just one time." I advise her not to trust a single word he says. This has been happening for over 9 months, and I have spent the last 15 minutes recording all the details they were willing to reveal. I assure her that I will text her my contact information and she should send me her email address so that I can forward her the video. I hand him his phone and overhear her warning him that a packed bag will be waiting outside when he gets home. If he tries to enter the house, she will call the police. As she hangs up, I throw his clothes at him and he leaves. Now it is just me and my wife left. She looks at me, tears streaming down her face, and apologizes profusely. She never intended to cause me pain. She asks if I can find it in my heart to forgive her. It nonsensical, all the typical individuals who cheat. Excuses. I gaze at her teacher as she gathers her belongings and leaves my residence. I descend the stairs and pour myself a beverage. I am seated on the couch when she comes down the stairs. She starts to approach me and I command her to stop. She asks if we can discuss this, and I reply, maybe, just maybe, but not at this moment. I inform her that it will be extremely challenging to resist seeking a divorce lawyer, and she begins to cry once again. She looks at me, and I can sense that "I love you" is on the tip of her tongue. I interrupt her and warn her not to utter those words right now because I don't think I will ever trust them again. More tears flow as she turns and walks out the door. Seeing her in tears as she leaves, my entire world departs. I crumble and collapse on the floor, trembling, crying uncontrollably. I cannot determine how much time has passed, but eventually I manage to sit up, still shedding tears, and I call my best friend. I try to speak, but the tears start flowing again, and I cannot articulate the words. He asks, "What's wrong?" But I am unable to respond. He asks if I am at home, and I manage to say yes. He assures me that he is on his way. Half an hour later, he is in my living room. I am still in tears. I hand him my phone with the video on display, and he begins to watch. I cannot bear to hear it, so I go to prepare drinks for both of us. He enters the kitchen, takes my drink away, and pours them both down the sink, saying, "This isn't going to help you." He insists that I cannot stay here alone tonight and instructs me to go upstairs and pack a bag. I return downstairs and he has my dog on a leash and we head to his place. An update for those of you who commented on how wonderful my friend is. His name is Dan and I couldn't agree more. Given our long-standing friendship, it is only natural that our families would be close. Our children are friends, and when they were younger, we used to go on family camping trips together. Over the years, his wife Terry and mine have become close friends, which is relevant to what happened next as we were driving to his house. I was silent, and Dan was growing increasingly angry. When we arrived at his place, he walked in and asked Terry, "Did you know?" She responded with a confused no. "What?" He raised his voice and asked again, "Did you know?" I intervened, telling him to calm down and reminding him that this wasn't her fault. He realized he was out of line and apologized to Terry with a hug. Now, utterly bewildered, Terry was handed my phone by Dan, who said, "Show her." I took my dog outside, not wanting to. Hear it again. When it was over, Terry came outside in tears and gave me a long, comforting hug. She took my hand and we went back inside. The three of us spent the next hour so talking and crying and talking, all the while my phone was buzzing nonstop. As you might have guessed, it was my wife. I disregard the calls and erase the texts without even glancing at them. Then my son rings up. He's curious about what's happening. His mom is at his place with his wife claiming I kicked her out. I ask him, "Did she tell you why?" He responds, "No." I tell him, "Handle the phone." She needs to explain. He asks why, and I tell him I'll send him the video if she doesn't. And then I hang up. About 10 minutes later, my son calls back sobbing. All he can stutter out is a series of WTF. I switch from being upset to being a comforting dad, reassuring him that it's going to be all right and that none of this is his fault. He calms down and checks if I'm okay, to which I respond with a tearful, "Of course not." He finally tells me that his mom will be staying the night and quickly ends the call. My phone rings again. This time it's my daughter. I'd forgotten that I asked her to look after the dog while we were supposed to be away for the weekend. She's wondering where Cooper, my lab, is. I tell her plans have changed and we're not going, but she can still stay at the house. Neither of us. "We'll be home tonight," she asks. "What do you mean, neither of you?" "Where are you?" I tell her. "I'm at Dan and Terry's, and your mom is at your brother's." She insists, "Dad, tell me what's going on." I respond, "I can't right now. I'll swing by the house tomorrow and we can talk." Then she keeps pushing, but I keep refusing. Eventually, she gives up and ends the call. I know exactly where the next call is going to. B. Then I ping my son, giving him a heads up about an imminent call. Next, I dial my wife, asking her if she's ready to spill the beans to our daughter or if the task falls on me. Her response is nothing but a fresh wave of tears. I disconnect the call. After a half hour, there's a knock at the door. Dan lets my daughter in. Seeing me in tears, she rushes to me and we both break down in a tight embrace. She's unaware of the reason behind our emotional outburst. When we manage to regain some composure, I call my wife again, letting her know that our daughter is with me. And once again, I ask if she's ready to break the news, or should I put her on speaker? My daughter chimes in, asking her mom to clarify what she's supposed to reveal. But all she hears is more crying. So I decide to step up, ending the call without revealing any details. I then drop the bombshell. I found out today that her mother has been having an affair for the past 9 months. Just when I thought my pain couldn't intensify, the look of hurt on my little girl's face brings me to my knees. She's shaking, too shocked to even cry. I'm on the floor, a sobbing wreck, immobilized. I feel like I've let her down when she needed me the most. I couldn't even muster the strength to move. Terry, with tears in her eyes, rushes over to comfort her, promising her that things will eventually be okay. Dan is also shedding tears. Like I mentioned, our families are tight-knit. She finally releases this heart-wrenching cry that I know will haunt me forever, even if I live to be a century. Old. I finally gather myself and go to embrace them both. We all eventually find our way to the couch, lost for words. I ask my daughter if she's going to be all right. She looks at me and says, "Dad, don't fret about me. Are you going to pull through?" I manage to croak out, "I'll cope." She asks if she can take Cooper with her to the house and if her fiancé Tim can come stay there. Naturally. I agree. I'm relieved she won't be alone after she leaves. Terry is livid, saying, "I can't believe she did this," and proceeds to call her every name under the sun. She calms down and grabs her phone, saying she's going to call her, looking at me, expecting me to object. I tell her, "Go ahead, but put it on speaker." So she calls, exchanging small talk and so on. Finally, she tells her that Mike, that's me, called Dan in tears after she left the house. And now I'm staying there. Terry knows everything. Again, more crying. Terry just lets loose yelling at her. "What were you thinking? How could you? Why didn't you come talk to me before you started down this path? If something was lacking, why didn't you talk to Mike? You know how understanding he is. Do you have any idea how many people you've heard? Darlene, our daughter, just left here. I can't even begin to describe the look on her face when Mike told her, 'Dan and I will never be able to see you in the same light again.' How could you be so damn self-centered?" Just more sobbing on the other end, repeating how remorseful she is. Terry doesn't end the call, just listens to her weep. After a moment or so, I ask Terry to hand me the phone. "Ashley?" No answer. I call her name again. "Ashley?" She finally responds, "Yes, babe." I retort, "You've lost the right to call. Me that." More sobbing from her end. "I just want to know what are you truly sorry for? If I hadn't come home early, would you have realized the gravity of your actions, or would you have slept with your boss?" Once we returned from our trip, more crying. "You're not really sorry for all the people you've hurt, including your boss's family. You're just sorry you got caught." I end the call. Dan. Terry and I chat a bit more while my phone continues to buzz incessantly. I finally attempt to sleep, but to no avail. In the morning, I ask Dan to drive me home, give Terry a hug, and express how much they both mean to me. I tell Dan I plan to head to my cabin for some solitude. He agrees that it's a wise move. As we're driving, I notice that amidst the flurry of notifications on my phone, there's one message from my wife's boss's wife, expressing her gratitude for the revelation and providing her email address. I forward the video and offer her the chance to reach out if she needs to. Unload. It might be beneficial for both of us. I pack up quietly, careful not to disturb Darlene and Tim. As I'm loading up the truck, I pick up a couple of my .22 rifles. Dan questions my actions, and I explain, I usually do some target practice. Up there. Not this time, he counters, confiscating them. Cooper hops in and off we go. Upon arrival, about 2.5 hours later, I get the place opened up and start a fire in the fireplace. Cooper and I take a stroll in the woods. It's somewhat soothing, but not entirely. My son rings to check up on me, and I inform him of my whereabouts. I tell him if his mother wants to stay at the house, that's fine, but she needs to clear out before I return. He agrees. After our walk, Cooper dozes off by the fireplace, and I head out to chop some firewood. It's a great workout, and surprisingly, therapeutic. With each axe swing, I alternate between envisioning my wife's face and her boss's. I stay put Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. On Monday, I start making calls, first to my office, letting them know I'll be out for a bit but can be contacted for emergencies. Next, I call my go-to attorney for any company-related legal issues, who recommends a divorce lawyer. Thursday, I've got a meeting with a lawyer I've contacted, then I'm on the phone with the bank putting a hold on our shared accounts. Next up, credit cards. Canceling them all and asking for new ones to be sent out. Being alone in the woods has given me some clarity about my next steps. I find myself trembling again, questioning whether I'm really going to go through with this or try to salvage our marriage. After I get home, I find this subreddit and start reading other people's stories. It helps, but only a little. Midweek, I head into the office and chat with my HR manager. We have a close professional relationship that's about to get more personal. I spill the beans and ask for advice on how to approach their company. She advises me to talk to my lawyer before I do anything. She asks if I'm going to get tested. She recommends someone and also says I should see my doctor for an STD check. I make calls to both and set up appointments for Thursday. I meet with my now lawyer, show her the video. This time I can actually listen. She starts shaking her head and says, "Why do people do such stupid things?" Turns out she has absolutely no tolerance for cheaters. Her husband cheated on her and dragged her through hell. So much so that she changed her practice and became a divorce attorney. She reassures me that everything will be okay and I sign a contract with her. I ask about telling the wives and the bosses, HR, and she says we should wait. In the meantime, I've had a meeting with my wife. She's taken refuge at our son's place. At least she's wise enough to understand that I need some space and wasn't at the house when I returned. I've been crashing on the couch because I can't bear to step foot in our bedroom. When I need to grab stuff, I try to get as much as possible to minimize the number of times I have to enter that room. Thanks for sticking with me this far. It took an eternity to type this out. Writing about my daughter had me in tears for several hours. I'll provide another update next week. Update. Once again, I want to express my deep gratitude for all the advice and support I've received from this community. I'm indebted to each and every one of you in a way I can never repay. All I can do is say thank you and try to respond to all the comments. The support and encouragement have been incredibly helpful. Many of you have commented on the strength I showed during the confrontation, but right now I feel anything but strong. I'm just going through the motions. All the advice has been excellent and is helping me move forward. Secondly, the reason for this post and my original one was because I was seeking help. Trust me, there was plenty. Given the reason my first post was removed, I was told it was because it had too much storytelling and not enough requests for support. I'll try to keep this brief, but I believe details are important. I'm starting to accept that there's likely no coming back from this, and I'm 99% certain of what my decision will be. Yet I can't shake the thought that I'll be discarding 29 years of our shared life. Even now, I can't bring myself to type X and still refer to her as my wife. What's wrong with me? Help. On D-Day, she ended up at our son's place with his wife. He called puzzled about what was going on and why I'd kicked his mom out. I told him she needed to tell him, or I would. He knew I'd gone to my best friend's house. My daughter, who was supposed to be dog-sitting, came home to find no dog. Eventually, she showed up at my friend's place wanting to know what was wrong. I told her. The pain on her face was worse than catching my wife in bed with her boss, and it devastated me. She left with the dog to our house and had her fiancé come over on Saturday morning. I told my friend I was going to spend a few days at the cabin. Could he drop me home? He agreed it was a good idea, so I packed up, took the dog, and spent some time at the cabin walking in the woods with the dog and splitting firewood. It was a good workout and therapeutic. I stayed there until Saturday, then drove home. On Monday, I started making phone calls to the bank, credit card companies, and a lawyer I use for company matters. He recommended someone whom I called and met on Thursday. I played her the recording. She was extremely confident, and I hired her. I asked about informing my wife's boss and HR department, and she suggested we hold off. I'm home now sleeping, on the couch. I can't bring myself to go into the bedroom except for clothes. On Friday, my son called to tell me his mom couldn't stay there anymore. It was causing strain for him and his wife. Could she come home? I hadn't spoken to my wife since D-Day. I reluctantly agreed. She returned. On Saturday, I went back to the cabin. It was freezing, but I managed. On Monday, I went straight to the office. The people there love my dog, and he gets spoiled. I finally went home on Monday night. When I saw my wife, all I could see was the image of her in bed with her boss on D-Day. I don't think I'll ever get past that. Any suggestions? We didn't speak. I changed and went to my basement office to keep busy. Eventually, I watched TV in the basement. She came downstairs and asked if we could talk about this. I told her I wasn't ready yet and asked her to leave me alone. While she was there, I fell asleep in the recliner, woke up early, went to the gym, showered there, and went to work. My routine is to go home late for the rest of the week. On Friday, my HR manager checks in on me. I fill her in on the recent events and my therapist visit. She suggests that I should stop sleeping on couches and chairs and buy a new bed. I think it's a fantastic idea. I withdraw half of the remaining joint account funds, which is my wife's share, and head out to buy a new bed. The delivery is scheduled for Saturday. I waited the office for the call that they'll be there in 30 minutes. I stop to pick up a couple of subs for the delivery guys and wait nearby. When they arrive, I meet them, treat them to lunch, and give each of them $25 to do me a favor. I ask them not to haul away the old mattress and if they could come back later to pick it up. I ask them to lean it against a tree near the street. They look puzzled, and I tell them to give me 5 minutes and come in. They'll understand. Now, I had thought about burning the old mattress in the driveway, but I didn't want to deal with the cleanup. I go upstairs and strip the bedding. While I'm doing this, something comes back to me that I need to find out about. I take a can of Blaze orange spray paint that we use for marking properties we're working on, and Spray Wife cheated on me in our bed in big letters. The guys come in and my wife asks, "What's happening?" I tell her I can't sleep in that bed anymore and that she bought me a new one. She seems upset but retreats. Downstairs, the new bed is set up and the guys leave the old mattress where I request it. After a while, she informs me that they left the old mattress in the yard and that they'll be back for it. I respond, struggling to keep a straight face. I don't think she's caught on yet, but the entire neighborhood certainly has come Valentine's Day. She attempts to be romantic and initiates intimacy. I reject her, stating that I wouldn't take her up on the offer even if she were the last woman on earth. She retorts, saying that we don't just have sex, we make love. Her voice filled with distress. I counter that we haven't made love since she started sleeping with her boss. She looks taken aback. Did she think I'd forget? I'm utterly baffled by her thought process. I decide it's as good a time as any to have a discussion and ask her to sit down in the living room. I ask her what she wants to do. Should we attempt to mend things or should we divorce and move on? I'm not sure why I even proposed the former. I guess I'm hung up on the idea of discarding 29 years. Please convince me otherwise. She claims she's willing to do anything I ask to rectify by the situation and pleads for my forgiveness. I tell her she needs to confess to everyone in our family, starting with her parents and my mom, including the details of how I discovered the affair. Our kids aren't aware of this detail yet. They're visiting tonight. I'll provide an update later on how that unfolds. That's my current situation. I'm still in a state of shock from everything and constantly battling the urge to confront her boss. But I still need advice. When will things start to improve? Or is this my new reality? Update that evening. My dad passed away 3 years ago. Her parents, her sister, and brother-in-law all come over. We all settle in the living room and I make sure to sit as far away from her as possible. They start with the comforting words. What's wrong? We love you. Everything will be okay. Assuming someone is seriously ill, I glance at her and say, this story isn't going to tell itself. Her dad looks at me and I swear his eyes are saying, oh no, as if he senses what's coming. I have to give her credit. She tearfully confesses everything, including the part where I walked in on them, in our bed. After a long, uncomfortable silence, she pleads, somebody say something. I respond. What are they supposed to say? That you're a terrible person, that you've hurt me more than you can imagine. Ripped my heart out, thrown away 29 years and ruined our family. Not to mention the damage you two have done to his family. Was the sex really worth all that? I just keep going. All the anger, hatred, and betrayal I've been bottling up comes, pouring out. I didn't know I could be so harsh. Her mom finally says that's enough. She agrees that she deserves it all and runs upstairs crying. Her mom tries to follow her, but her dad says no, leave her alone. She needs to suffer for a while before this can get any better. We chat for a bit. They offer their support and tell me if I need anything, just ask. I tell them I've been seeing a counselor and I think I'll be okay, but I appreciate their offer. I tell them that despite everything, I still love her and that she's going to need them more than I do. I go to bed and sleep better than I have since. Day. The next morning before I leave, I go into the guest room and can tell she didn't sleep and has been crying all night. I truly believe that for the first time since day, the gravity of what's happening has finally hit her. Telling her family and having me lash out at her like I did, I think it snapped her out of the affair fog. She looks like she's genuinely remorseful. I tell her we need to talk more, like I talk. She listens. I explain that I'm 99% leaning towards divorce, but I'm still clinging to the 1% life raft. That if there's any hope. She needs to do what I ask to help me get over this. She says she'll do anything just to please not do anything yet. A reminder of a story I told her. When my dad died when I was 17, my dad shared some wisdom with me. He said, "You'll face tough times in life, but how you handle them speaks volumes about your character. Never make crucial decisions when you're upset." At the time, I brushed it off with a casual, "Yeah, Dad, whatever." I start to tear up as I say how much I wish he were here so I could tell him that I was really listening. She gets up and hugs me. I don't reciprocate, but it feels comforting, which unnerves me. She sits back down and I tell her she needs to move out. I can't heal if I see her every day. We need to go. No contact. She agrees and asks what else she can do. I tell her I'm too emotional to think straight now, but I'll let her know. On my way to work, I call my lawyer and arrange to meet. Her today. She's free, so we meet. For coffee. I update her on everything, the 991% dilemma, etc. I ask her to prepare divorce papers in case I decide to proceed. She suggests that if I can afford it, I should find an apartment for my wife and pay the first month's rent. This would demonstrate good faith, if things go to court. I agree. And she says she'll have something for me to review by Monday. I call a real estate broker we've worked with over the years. Explain the situation and what I need. He refers me to a rental agent. The agent finds a suitable place, and I meet with the property manager to pay for the rest of February, March, and the deposit. When I get home, I tell my wife about the apartment, what I've paid for, and that she needs to meet the manager and sign the lease. It's a 6-month lease, which seems like a plus. She's surprised by how quickly I've acted. I tell her that I needed her not to come home from our sons. While she's gone, I arrange for movers to come on Saturday. When she gets home, I tell her about the movers and ask why she hasn't asked about finances. I inform her that I've canceled the credit cards, withdrawn my half from our joint account, and canceled the debit card. She seems angry, but admits she doesn't blame me. It turns out she hasn't needed to spend anything as she's been splitting her time between our son's place and home. She also reveals that she requested a leave of absence from work due to personal issues. They allowed her to take her paid vacation first on Friday. I tell her she can take whatever she needs for the new place. Just leave me some essentials and nothing from the basement or any family heirlooms and my new bed. I also tell her that I'm open to marriage counseling. She should find 3 different counselors and I'll choose the one I think is best. I leave early on Saturday morning and return to a half-empty house, including the TV. That's okay, I wanted a bigger one. Anyway, my friend still has my liquor, so I stop by to pick up my favorite bourbon and enjoy a glass while typing this. Sorry this was so long. Thanks for reading this far. Tomorrow I'm hitting the gym, making my favorite chili, and buying a new TV. I'm sure I'll have more to post in the future.